right, welcome back, everybody. We will be starting our second session in less than a minute or so at this point. Going to put this slide up again just to remind everybody about the session controls. In this conference format, you all have your cameras off and your mics are muted at our end. So if there's going to be any questions, best thing to do is to open the chat and put your question in there. We can then have those addressed when at the most opportune moment. You can see some other things that you can do with the ribbon at the top of the screen, raising and lowering your hand, changing your screen view, etc. And just a reminder, this, as with all other sessions, is being recorded right now. And I have put up in the chat box a link to our conference webpage. The slides are available on there now, and the recordings will be available at the beginning of next week. So with that all said, let's go ahead and start the session. This is we're shifting from census data now to GIS data. So this is Geodata for municipalities. And the format here, we will have 3 short presentations. We will start with Rebecca Bannon from the Earth Systems Research Center at UNH, who will talk about the latest offerings from New Hampshire Granite and the NH Geodata portal. And then Sarah Siskovich from the Nashua Regional Planning Commission will talk about the New Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commission's GIS portfolio. And then to finish, Jackson Rand from Stratford Regional Planning Commission will talk about a specific municipal GIS project, the City of Dover Urban Street Tree Inventory. So why don't we just go ahead at this point? Looks like all our presenters are here. I'm going to just introduce Rebecca Bannon really quickly, and we can be on with the presentation. Rebecca works at for New Hampshire Granite in the Earth Systems Research Center at the University of New Hampshire. She's been working for Granite since 2016. She earned her master's degree in biological oceanography from the Graduate School of Oceanography at the University of Rhode Island. And she has also worked at the Environmental Data Center at URI, frequently working on projects for the National Park Service. Her work at Granite has varied widely. She's been doing data maintenance, creation, analysis, website design, communications and outreach, and creating instructional materials. So covering a lot of ground there. And I will say, Rebecca, you can go right ahead, take control, and let's get going. Okay, Rebecca, you're still muted. There we go.
Yep, there we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Ken. Yes, as Ken said, I work with Granite at UNH, and I'll be talking with you today about our data and resources. There are so many ways to access and use and interact with GIS data, and I know probably those attending today vary greatly in your experience with GIS and what you intend to do with it. So I'm going to do my best to provide a little something for everyone. Feel free to ask questions at the end or to reach out to Granite in the future. You can reach out through granite@unh.edu or to me. All that information will be at the end as well. Today I'm going to provide an introduction to Granite, who we are and what we're working on, some of our data viewers, how to access GIS resources through the New Hampshire Geodata portal, and I'll talk about a number of our web applications that do all sorts of different things. So Granite is New Hampshire's statewide GIS clearinghouse. Collaboration with a variety of partners is at the core of what we do. We work with state agencies, nonprofits, planning commissions, municipalities, and federal partners. Our functions include data development and distribution, online mapping and app development, image processing, spatial analysis, cartography, and training and technical services. There are a few constants that we refer to as our core activities, and these are maintaining and hosting data in our websites, maintenance of the Granite View and New Hampshire Coastal Viewer data mappers, and ongoing development of data such as the conservation and public lands layer. These core activities are funded annually by a number of partners. Some of these data layers that, excuse me, that we have most recently updated over the last few months have included updated LIDAR, which is elevation data for the coastal region, and then updates to the statewide mosaic data sets that are based on that. Conservation and public lands, roads layers for DOT, a couple of different sea level rise models. There's new ortho imagery from NAPE, which is the National Agriculture Imagery Program. Also voting districts and updated parcel data. So in addition to our core activities, we undertake a variety of projects, and our most recent new project is the New Hampshire Broadband Mapping Initiative. We've contracted with the state's Department of Business and Economic Affairs to map the status of broadband internet access statewide. A particular goal of this project is to identify underserved and unserved areas of the state in order to guide application of the federal funding for expansion of broadband access. This project website is nhbroadbandmapping.unh.edu. In addition to being able to view data there, the public can also access a connectivity survey, which would allow someone to report that their address does not have broadband access. And there's a speed test, so someone could determine their home computer's actual upload and download speeds. We've recently launched a dashboard and data viewer for this project with our first iteration of mapped data. So the dashboard displays statistics for served, underserved, and unserved areas. When you open it, it's initially showing statewide statistics, but then you can filter by municipality, county, regional planning commission. Here, there's been a filter applied to just look at Grafton County, and you can see that the numbers there have changed to show percentages. So I know that our census presentation was just talking about broadband. Our data is drawn from reporting from the internet service providers, and we are defining served as wireline connections with speeds greater than 100 upstream and 20 downstream. So it's a little bit faster definition than what the census was using. Here you can click down here at the bottom, the data viewer, and you can view another interactive mapping tool. The data viewer will show this percentage served data as well as served by road segment. Then you can also use the search for broadband availability button at the top, and you can type in an address and determine if your address is served and what internet service providers are operating on your street. As far as statewide data, one of the most frequent way people interact with Granite data is through Granite View and the New Hampshire Coastal Viewer. These mappers operate very similarly to each other. Granite View contains the statewide data. If you don't know what data are available for your community, I encourage you to go and explore. There's quite a bit of functionality for creating custom maps. You can adjust layer symbols. You can adjust transparency, you can reorder layers, you can draw in the map and measure things, um, and you can create layouts for printing or sharing. If you have an ArcGIS Online account, you can log in to save your work as a project. And you can also click on a data set and access metadata, which is the documentation for a data set. The coastal viewer operates very similarly to Granite View, but as the name implies, it's got a seacoast focus. It includes some data layers that you won't find on Granite View, such as sea level rise modeling and eelgrass distribution. There are also some tools, some custom tools for both viewers. There's a new tool for Granite View for mapping wetlands, and the coastal viewer has a custom tool for clipping one data set to another and producing a summary table. So there's a lot to work with there. Hopefully over the last year you have noticed that we've launched a new Granite webpage and continue to make updates to the Geodata portal. This is what you see when you go to granite.unh.edu now. This site and the Geodata portal are based on Esri's ArcGIS Hub and ArcGIS Online infrastructure. This means if you have ArcGIS Online credentials, you can log in to seamlessly integrate Granite's resources with your own ArcGIS Online content. Through the new Granite site, you can access the data portal as well as viewers and other resources. There's a data viewers menu. There's also a resource library here where we have links to the regional planning commissions as well as town websites, and we try to keep up to date on links to websites, GIS resources that the towns would make available as well. You scroll down farther on the page, we have a news and events section where we highlight newly updated data as well as upcoming GIS related events in New Hampshire. We have a Twitter feed. You can find all that on our new site. So now we can talk more about data. So when you go to the New Hampshire Geodata portal, there are a number of ways to access GIS data and applications. Across the top of the page are links that will jump down the page, such as to find the section with state agencies. That would be this agency galleries button. Right here at the top are some theme galleries, so some topics arranged by theme. So if we click on the planning card, then we have links to the New Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commissions hub site and the Office of Planning and Development. One tool that's available through the Office of Planning and Development is the Flood Hazards Viewer. The Flood Hazards Viewer allows you to explore flood risk in your community based on the FEMA flood insurance rate maps. On the left is the view you get when you first open the viewer. I wanted to point out that the documentation on this viewer is really complete. This is something to keep in mind if you or your organization makes something that you want to go on the portal. A splash screen like this one, and then an easily found information box is really helpful to users of your app. You want visitors to immediately know what your app's trying to communicate and how they can use its features. Also available through the planning page is the Regional Planning Commission's hub site, which I know Sarah's going to talk about, and there's a lot of great resources there. Because all of this is supported through ArcGIS Online, these apps are also discoverable individually through the New Hampshire Geodata portal. So again, documentation is key to providing context and instructions for people who might interact with your applications, no matter how they find them. If you've come to the Geodata portal for GIS data, there's a number of ways to discover this as well. So to browse all of the categories, you can click data categories or just scroll down the page, or you can type a keyword into the search box. If you, on the left here is what you would see if you type in soils as your search. You get a data listing of all the soils data sets. On the right here is are all of our data categories if you just want to browse that way. So I could click on cultural, society, and demographic. And then again, I would get a listing of data sets. This time, the tag cultural has been applied. So any of the data sets that were tagged as cultural data sets are showing up in this search. So let's say that the data set that I wanted was the New Hampshire Community Center areas. If I click on that in that listing, I would get a view like this. So there's a map of the data on the right, and then more information about and some options on the left. Over here on the right, I could click on this attribute table icon and view the attributes for those data. There are some tools for selecting within the map or drawing in the map. And then there's a button down in the corner that says, I want to use this. This would allow you to open this data set into an ArcGIS Online map and use it that way. There's a view data source would let you get a URL to work with that data in your own software. There's some options there. You can also select a portion of a data set. So we could click filter data, and then you would get a list of the attributes of that data set, and you could work with those to choose just a portion of that data. Another option is to use the map to select some data. So say I just want the data that's in Rochester. I could zoom into Rochester on the map, click filter as map moves, and then you would see I am just working with the three pieces of that data that are in the current map view. If I just wanted to download those, I can click the download button. I would need to click toggle filters to turn on that spatial filter. And then I could choose a file type. Now you'll see it does say downloading an updated file may take some time. So downloading custom data sets from ArcGIS Online really can be slow. So an option to make your download faster would be to select a previously generated file version, or you can just download the whole statewide data set using the option to download prepackaged shapefile. That would come from Granite's FTP site, and it would just be the statewide data set. If you are someone who's been working with GIS data from Granite for a while, and you miss the old way of accessing data, we do have an option for you. You can click under the data categories listing, you can find this link for View Full New Hampshire Granite Data Inventory. This is a scrollable list of all of our data sets. Each data set listed here has a link to that item in the portal, as well as a link to download that data set from the FTP server. This is for a lot of the data sets. You can get them straight from our FTP server, and you could skip downloading from ArcGIS Online. I also wanted to point out this quick links button. Under that link to the data inventory is quick links. This has some more resources. It has a list of our services. These are a way to connect to the data set without downloading it. There's the FTP server. There's a guide to participating in the portal. What kinds of things do you need to do in order to contribute content? And I also wanted to point out this data and mapping help document. This is an illustrated step-by-step guide to some of our most frequently asked questions. So if you have an issue with Granite View or with the portal, check that out. And if there's something there that something you have a question with and it's not there, please reach out and we will see about getting some instructions up. And then I thought I would just highlight a few more of our web apps. One is the New Hampshire Geodata image download tool. Um, this is if you would like to have a your own local copy of some imagery, but you just want a small spatial extent. You can use this tool to download tiles of data. Um, and there are 6 data collections available on this app. And the one that opens by default is the 2015 statewide 1-foot imagery. Another app that's interesting is Dirt to Trees to Wildlife. This one is pretty neat. It's allows a land manager to focus in on a forest stand and study the interconnectedness of soil types, forest types, and wildlife species there. There are instructional videos for this application if you're interested in checking it out. The app generates reports of suggested forest management strategies to support wildlife habitat, and there's a lot of fascinating stuff there. And then finally, I thought I'd talk a little bit about LiDAR. Um, if you are familiar with LiDAR elevation data and you want access to our data collections, including the point cloud data, you should visit the Granite LiDAR distribution site. This is available through a link on the portal or the main Granite site, or you go to lidar.unh.edu. This is where you would go to see the various collections of data that Granite has. They vary in spatial extent and date. Um, and then for those collections, you could download digital elevation models, intensity images, and the point cloud files if you wanted those. If you're not familiar with LiDAR, it's a really fascinating technology that provides detailed elevation data using light pulses collected from aircraft. There are myriad uses for these data. Granite has produced several statewide mosaic data sets that combine the various data collections. Some examples of these include a digital elevation model. This would be the bare surface of the earth. There's digital surface models, which incorporate trees. There's hillshades and slope representations. Here's some examples of what these can look like. So a digital elevation model, um, a digital surface model. This looks grainy because it includes individual trees. And then there's a hillshade, which is meant to represent the data as if the light is shining across it and casting shadows. A great example of an application of the hillshade data is the New Hampshire Stonewall Mapper. Perhaps some of you have looked at this one. This mapper was produced with DES, and it allows the community to participate in mapping stone walls throughout the state. It's a great example of using hillshades. Here, with the hillshade turned on, you can see some lines. Hopefully those show up for you. The stone walls really pop in the hillshades, and then someone can just go in and trace them and add them to the mapper. Um, Granite has also used LiDAR to create 2-foot contour lines for the state. These are available by watershed, and they're some of our most popular data sets. And then another example of a use for LiDAR is sea level rise modeling. Granite recently released updated models using higher resolution LiDAR that was collected for the coastal region. These layers are available on the coastal viewer, and they show mean higher high water at various potential sea level rise heights and with storm surge. That's my really broad brush view of Granite's resources. Please feel free to ask questions or reach out if there's things you'd like to learn more about. And I encourage you to visit our websites and to explore for yourself all the things that we have to offer.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. That was all sorts of interesting information there. And we probably have time for a question or two if anybody has any. Otherwise, we can move on. Just raise your hand or type something in the chat. Okay, well, in that case, we will go on ahead and let's see. Yep, we'll go on to our next presentation. And this will be Sarah Siskovich will be presenting about the New Hampshire Regional Planning GIS portfolio. Sarah is responsible for GIS and other technology initiatives at the Nashua Regional Planning Commission. She's worked in the GIS field since 2001 and has managed the Nashua Planning Commission GIS program since 2012. Formerly, she was the manager of GIS and CAD at Unitil in Hampton, and she's also held GIS positions in consulting and state government. She's earned a Bachelor of Arts in Biology and a Master of Arts in Geography, both from Boston University, and she is now a member of URISA, the Urban and Regional Information Systems Association, and she holds a voting seat on the New Hampshire Statewide GIS Committee. So go ahead, Sarah, you can take control.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to my talk today. I just wanted to kind of make a seamless sort of segue here. Becca mentioned that there's a sort of sub-hub, I guess you could call it, basically a site that you can access through the New Hampshire Geodata portal, specific to content developed by the New Hampshire Regional Planning Commissions. And I just wanted to point out that that can be accessed through its own dedicated URL, which is here on the slide. And I'd encourage anyone who has an interest to check it out. It really contains a broad variation of GIS content, all of which was developed by each of the 9 regional planning commissions. And it's organized under the themes of livability, sustainability, mobility, and prosperity, which are really the values that guide regional planning work here in New Hampshire on behalf of our communities. So Jackson's going to dive into one specific app that is featured there in that portfolio, but I'd encourage others to check it out on your own time. It's really a nice collection of, it's a gallery, essentially, an Esri gallery of app content. And it gives you kind of a good sense of what regional planning commissions might be able to do for your community. I also just wanted to point out, not only is the GIS portfolio there really sort of showcasing some of the content from the New Hampshire Geodata portal, on a more local level here in Nashua, we host a parcel viewer. It's called MapGeo. It's a commercial product, but I just want to point out there's a myriad of data integrations here. We're hitting the New Hampshire Geodata portal website, ArcGIS for server web services, and by integrating through web services, we're able to pull in and show us a number of overlays, a whole variety of information, things from state agencies that they've published, such as wetlands, tiered habitat. The LiDAR has been really useful that Becca mentioned. So I just want to point out that there's sort of this, I guess, maybe a little underappreciated interdependency between what we might be doing at the regional and local levels and, the resources that are available from the state. So I just want to thank New Hampshire Granite and their statewide partners, because it really is sort of an interdependent ecosystem of GIS work, and we all kind of lean on each other for that. But I wanted to kind of move a little bit away from that to talk about a topic that I think is relevant for this audience as planning and zoning board members. And it has to do with build-out analysis, which is a data-driven activity that uses GIS. And really, it's meant for planning boards, community development, you guys, and to support the work that you're doing. New Hampshire Regional Plan, National Regional Plan, we did 2 of these projects over the past 12 months or so. This I'm going to be talking about what we did for Amherst, New Hampshire, which is where I live, as an example. We also did a build-out analysis for Pelham. And both of these projects arose in the context of their master plan updates. So they tackled their comprehensive master plan for their towns, and at the same time felt that it was going to be a useful tool to take a look at some of the themes, some of the questions that were being raised in the context of the master planning process, and to really quantify in some ways and show a picture of what those sometimes intangible concepts really could mean. And so just to frame what I'm going to be talking about, I'll talk a little bit about what is a build out and what a build out is not, and then go through how do we construct a model to do build out analysis, and what a build out analysis can tell you. I probably should have a slide for this, but just in summary, a build out, like I said, is a data-driven tool, and it allows planners and decision makers to estimate future development based on scenarios. So build out, the word build out is really a theoretical condition, and at full build out, it basically exists when all available and suitable land has been developed. So it's sort of this theoretical extreme condition. And by using that, you can produce an estimate of the type and amount of future growth. And then from there, really make some estimates about what those impacts would be. A build out is not a prediction. It's not a projection. And it's not a perfect simulation of the development potential in town. So in some ways, it is a little bit of a challenge for a lay audience to think about, because you have these maps, you have these results, but it's really an expression of land use controls in a theoretical extreme. And by sort of simulating that, it gives you a bit deeper understanding as to what the current ordinance in your town, for example, might theoretically allow. It's a common thing that we hear at the commission that, well, there's not much buildable land left. But if you really start looking at it on a parcel by parcel basis, the picture can be somewhat different. And so it all sort of starts with zoning. So this is a map of Amherst's townwide zoning. Amherst is characterized by quite a bit of low density residential zoning, that yellow, and to the north, the green, for example, with commercial and industrial uses zoned towards the bottom, southern tier of the town, centered around the 101A corridor. So to start with the build out, it's taking that zoning data and basically programming some model assumptions. So by zoning district, what are the allowable characteristics in that zone? Minimum lot sizes, setbacks, floor area ratio, which is really useful to kind of estimate the amount of commercial space that might be available or allowed by zone. So this is a very kind of iterative and thoughtful process that we hammer out by sitting down with town staff, people who are knowledgeable and know the local ordinance in and out, and sort of best put numbers to these types of assumptions. So we've got our zoning, we've got a sort of quantitative characterization of what's allowed by zone in terms of future development, and then we go and subtract out development constraints. So areas of town where it's highly unlikely or not possible to have either new residential or commercial growth. So that could be everything from open water, wetlands, land uses that preclude future development, permanent conservation land, or softer things like steep slopes or flood zone. This is all very much at the discretion of the town. But the union in GIS terms of all of those constraints are shown here in this gray color. And so that really does sort of push the model to then place modeled new development in what remains. So I have two side-by-side maps here. On the left is what we call a time horizon build-out, and on the right is a simulation at full build-out. So there's different reasons to run the model under these two different modalities. The dots on the map represent new buildings. So the red there is commercial, and I believe that's green are the residential buildings. And we have heat map centered in the background there just to kind of call out, where those, I guess, hotspots, for lack of a better term, those clusterings of new development, where they would actually occur. On the left, you might run a time horizon of 20 years or 25 years, 40 years, something that is meaningful and may align with the greater planning activities such as the master plan. To do that, though, you really need to settle on what is your assumed rate of growth over time. And so for Amherst, we did that by looking at the past 5 years of new building starts in town. And that becomes sort of the basis for extrapolating into the future. So, you could be very optimistic in that estimate. You could be very conservative. But I want to point out that the model isn't going to be able to anticipate things like an economic downturn that might have a negative impact on growth, even over a couple years. It's really an extrapolation exercise, which is another reason to be very sort of specific in the messaging around this build out exercise, because it is not a projection, it's not a prediction of what's going to happen. On the right, sort of the opposite. This is a theoretical maximum. This is like, we're going to run the model. It could be 100 years out, it'd be 150 years out until there's no available space left on a lot by lot basis to place new buildings. And so again, this is sort of meant to be sort of that maximum expression of the land use controls that exist. And so this is kind of business as usual. This is like taking the zoning as is, all those assumptions that we talked about, and I'm kind of setting a baseline. But from there, the point of doing this is really for scenario planning, to ask questions. It's like, okay, well, we have this model now. Let's change existing conditions. Let's look at the constraints. Let's remap zoning districts. What are some of the things that might be coming up in the context of these discussions, and actually paint a picture. So for the town of Amherst, we had the baseline scenario, the business as usual. And then they chose to look at, well, okay, if we were to constrain additional lands, either through certain zoning or other regulations, what would be the impacts to that? So I've highlighted here on this table, this is a table from their report, the areas where we actually relied on New Hampshire Geodata portal data to actually facilitate this exercise. So again, just another application of using that statewide data for a local application. So it's very, very fortunate. We're very glad to be able to do that. So at full build out, using all the current regulations, constraints, and assumptions, the model, and I neglected to say, we're using a product called Community Viz, which is a third-party product that is a GIS-based tool. It actually is architected as a toolbar add-in for the Esri desktop environment. There are other tools. We happen to be using Community Viz. And at full build out in Amherst, we estimate that there's the potential to place almost 2,000 new buildings, almost 1,800 of them residential and 116 commercial and industrial buildings. And there's some estimates there for the amount of new commercial space by square footage, commercial and industrial. And so the alternative scenario where we constrain development further, you can see there's sort of this downward pressure in terms of how much, what the carrying capacity is for new buildings, which is what you would expect if you're removing developable land from the equation. I just want to point out too that the town of Pelham took things in a different direction. Rather than adjust the constraints that they were looking at in their model, They were interested in housing. Housing is a very important topic to them. It was a broad theme in their master plan. And so the question they were looking at was, how about if we, sort of look at larger parcels in town, say 10 acres or greater, 20 acres and greater, and say, all right, what if all the new development on those parcels was senior housing? What would that look like in terms of impacts to town services? And that's sort of my transition into talking a little bit about impact indicators that are, a result or a benefit of having done this model. So basically, by knowing a rough number of new households, you can estimate based on multipliers, essentially. It's not very complicated math. You can look to see, all right, well, what are the impacts on things like school enrollment? So we worked very closely. This is Amherst still, but okay, based on average numbers of children per household, and maybe what the trends have been. What's a good multiplier? And then we can talk a little bit about, okay, in future, what's the enrollment looking like at different grades? Impacts to emergency services like fire and police, EMS. Again, in the footer there of the slide, we note how we made this estimate. So again, it's just a multiplier based on extrapolated data. So take it for what it is, but at least gives you a sense of even like proportionally what those impacts could be. Town hall business, dog licenses, vehicle registrations, things that might be a little more interesting to regional planners based on these new households and commercial construction. What is the impact on vehicle trips generated based on a 20-year time scoped prediction at full build out or under a scenario situation? There's a whole menu in the software of these types of impact indicators, and it's really a challenge to figure out, okay, what are the ones that our customer, our town is going to want to look at. So this is what Amherst chose to focus in on. But really, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of impact indicators that are available. So I want to just in conclusion, mention the two projects that we worked on to do scenario planning here were under an umbrella of a master plan. But I would encourage municipalities to think about scenario planning much earlier, much more regularly. Even in the context of maybe a proposed zoning amendment that might affect growth and could be modeled in this way. There were a number of those in Amherst this year, and I feel that having some knowledge ahead of time about what those impacts could look like could have been really useful because we're kind of now after the fact. And I also want to just point out too, we're in a kind of a unique sweet spot now because we have not only statewide parcel data, which is parcels are a requirement to do a parcel-based scenario planning exercise such as this, but there's also now statewide zoning data, which is going to be a session after the break, the lunch break. So it just really positions many more communities to be able to undertake analysis such as this. So great opportune time to think about build out scenario planning. Just want to leave you with a couple links here. Well, four or five links. The New Hampshire GIS portfolio, check it out. If you're interested in property specific information in the Nashua region, you can look at our MapGeo property viewer. The New Hampshire build out is on their master planning webpage. It's still up. I can send along to anyone who's interested the link to the Pelham document. I think it's not on their site right now, but it's on the Nashua Regional Planning site. And then my contact information. I also have Ryan Friedman, who really was the man behind the wheel when it came to these build out projects, who's away this week. But he's also a great resource and very responsive via email if you have any really specific questions about the nitty gritty of these models. So that's what I had. I appreciate your time. Ken, I don't know if there's time for a question or two.
I would say, yeah, we certainly have time for one or two questions. So please raise your hand if you have one. We can unmute you. Okay. again, if you do have questions, if you think of something, put it in the chat and we can still address them. And thank you very much, Sarah. It's always good to see what new things are going on, and nice plug there for the Zoning Atlas presentation that's coming up after lunch. So that's wonderful. All right, very good. I'm going to take control back here of the slides, and we'll move on to the third part of our session, which will be presented by Jackson Rand. Jackson is the GIS planner at Stratford Regional Planning Commission in Rochester. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science with a concentration in GIS from Northeastern University. He has previously worked in a variety of GIS-based positions, including at Stantec, the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and the Trust for Public Land. At Stratford, Jackson serves as the GIS lead for a variety of transportation planning, economic development planning, and land use planning projects. So with that, Jackson, you can take control and we'll go ahead with the third part of the session.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I'm Jackson Rand. I'm the GIS planner at Stratford Regional Planning Commission, and I am going to be presenting on an urban street tree inventory project that we did in the city of Dover, New Hampshire. I'm going to give a brief overview of this entire project, but the focus of this presentation is going to be some innovative GIS tools that we use to complete the project. So brief overview. The goal of this project was to inventory and map all of the urban street trees in downtown Dover, New Hampshire. And we were going to analyze the health conditions and other factors of these trees to produce a report back to the city on the locations of all their trees, the conditions, and any maintenance needs that these trees are going to require. Why we did this project: urban street trees have a variety of benefits that they produce for the people in the area, which we don't have time to get into now, but there's a multitude of ecological, social, and economic benefits to having street trees in your downtown urban core area. Before doing this project, the city of Dover did not know the locations of their trees. They didn't know how many trees they had. They didn't know the condition of their trees. They didn't know the health of their trees. So we came in to try to help them figure out all of those questions. This project was performed in partnership between Stratford Regional Planning Commission and EF Design and Planning, with assistance from the city of Dover, and we use New Hampshire Coastal Resilience Municipal Planning Grant Funds to complete the project. This project inventoried all of the street trees in the central business district of Dover. And you can see a map on the right side of your screen showing where in Dover this area is. And for those of you familiar with the city of Dover, this encompassed most, if not all, of the corridors of Central Ave, Broadway, Chapel Street, Washington Street, and Silver Street. When we were preparing this project, we found that there were two large hurdles we were going to need to get over, one being people and two being technology. In order for us to go out into the field and inventory every single street tree in the downtown area, we were going to need a lot of people. So we utilized almost all staff at SRPC and interns and hired additional interns to complete this work. We utilized staff at EF Design and Planning. We were able to get volunteers from UNH who are students, and these students were using this volunteer time as hours towards specific courses or projects that they needed to in order to graduate. We also utilize community volunteers, people who live and work in the Stratford region. In terms of technology, we were looking for an innovative option that was going to help us complete the inventorying, and also an innovative option to display the data collected in this project. And that's what the rest of this presentation is going to focus on. We used Esri's Survey 123 app to collect all of the data for all the street trees. And then we used Esri's Arc Online mapping platform and Esri dashboards to produce final results and cool maps and interactive charts that display all the data we collected. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the methodology we used for this project, and I'm going to go into more details on all of these in a minute. So generally, the order of things we did to complete this project was that we created an attribute list of data that we were going to collect for every street tree. We created an instructions document for staff, interns, and volunteers to use to complete the inventorying. We recruited volunteers and staff. We performed the data collection using Esri's Survey 123 app. We reviewed and analyzed the data, and then we produced results and deliverables using Arc Online and Esri dashboards. So near the beginning of this project, Stratford Regional Planning Commission, as well as EF Design and Planning and the City of Dover gathered to discuss what kind of data we want to collect on each of these street trees. Some of the data we collected was pretty straightforward, such as height, species, and condition of the tree. But we also collected attribute data on things that most people wouldn't consider right off the bat, such as the side of the street. Knowing the side of the street that the trees were located on tells us how much or how little sunlight that tree can expect to get during the day, which in turn affects the type of species that the city may want to plant in that location, or specific maintenance needs that that tree is going to get based on the amount of sunlight that it receives. We also looked at a variety of maintenance needs, such as, is there graffiti on the tree? Has the tree been damaged? What is the condition of the mulch below the tree? Is the tree showing signs of disease or pests? And is the tree growing into the sidewalk or causing any transportation issues in the area? Once we had a completed attribute list, we needed to recruit volunteers. And once we recruited volunteers, we created a big instructions document that gave all of our volunteers an introduction to the project, how to sign up for shifts, inventorying trees, how to download and use the Survey 123 app to collect the data on the trees, and additional guidance on completing the questions that they were going to be asked about each tree in their area. Once we had all of this information and all of our volunteers, we were ready to start collecting data. So as I said, we used Esri's Survey 123 app. You can see screenshots on the right side of your screen of what that app looks like on your mobile device. This app worked really well for us. It eliminated the need for pen, paper, and a clipboard out in the fields. It eliminated the need for us to do manual data entry after all the data was collected. The Survey 123 app was created, or the survey used in the app was created by us and populated into every user's app. There is a function in the app to display a map, so you can capture coordinate or geographic information on where each of these trees is located. The app then prompts you with a variety of questions, which came from the attribute list we created. So it populates questions on the height of the tree, the condition of the tree, the species of the tree, that then the user can input right on their mobile device while out in the field. Esri's Survey 123 app also allows the user to capture photographs. So at the end of this project, we not only had all of this data, but we had photographs of every single tree in the downtown area of the city of Dover. The Survey 123 app also has an offline mode available. So if you are in an area that does not have cell service or Wi-Fi, you can still capture all of this data. And when you go home and log onto your home Wi-Fi, it'll upload the data to the Survey 123 site. We at Stratford Regional Planning Commission can also see all of this data in live time. So every day we were able to log onto our Survey 123 account and see how many trees have been inventoried today, by whom. We can see the photos of that trees from today. We don't have to wait for forms to be mailed to us or dropped off to us. We don't have to wait to input all of that data. It is all loaded online to the cloud immediately. We can also see a map of all of this data on our end. So we were able to watch as these sites were collected and see where all of these sites were, which really saved us a lot of time and money and allowed us to do more with this project than we would have been able to do if we used pen, paper, and clipboard to collect all of this data. I'm now going to move into talking about what we did with all of this data once we had finished collecting all of the street tree data in the city of Dover. We produced a bunch of maps and charts that went into the final report. So what you're seeing here in the top left is the number of trees by the type of species that they were. In the bottom left, you can see all of the maintenance needs that were required for all the trees in the downtown area. The pie chart on the left is showing what side of the building a tree is located on, which gives us more information about the amount of sunlight that that tree is receiving. And the pie chart on the right is showing the overall condition of the trees that were surveyed in the area. We took all of this data and loaded it into an Arc Online data dashboard. And here is a screenshot of what that dashboard looks like. In the top right of this screen, I included a link to the dashboard. So those of you watching at home, if you wish, you can type that link in and play with the dashboard as I talk about it. But I am going to switch over and pull up the dashboard now and give a short live presentation of how the dashboard works. I've shared my screen. If there's someone that can just let me know you're seeing it.
Looks good. I can see it.
Great, thank you. So this is the final product out of our street tree inventory project. And what you're seeing right in the center, the green map, that green outline is the extent of the central business district in Dover where this project took place. And all of the green dots on the map are the locations of all the street trees in this area of Dover. And we found 378 street trees that were inventoried and photographed. On this dashboard, you can zoom in on the map. So you can zoom into a specific area and see exactly where those trees are located. You can also click on any of the tree points on the map, and all of the attribute data we collected, except for photographs, can be seen right here. All of the pie charts over on the right side of the screen can all be interacted with. So if I zoom out so you can see all the street trees in the downtown area of Dover, and I look at the tree condition pie chart, when I click on the good section of the pie chart, the map shows only the trees in the downtown area that we said had good condition. We can also look at dead or dying, so we can now see the exact locations of where the dead and dying trees are. And having an interactive dashboard like this, the city of Dover found very helpful, so that there were more planners and more city staff who could explore this data who don't know how to use GIS. These pie charts, you can also select multiple pie charts at the same time, and the map will update accordingly. So if I want to know how many trees were rated as having fair condition, I can click on fair. And if I also want to see street trees with fair condition that do have injury or damage, I can click on the yes next to injury or damage, and the map will filter to show the results of both of those. To reset the map, you can click in the black space right outside the pie chart, and all of the street trees will appear back on the map. In a dashboard like this, we do have the ability to include the photographs for all of the trees, but decided that for this specific project, including the photographs was going to be too costly for the project budget. But we did receive photographs for every tree, and those photographs were provided to the city of Dover at the conclusion of this project. So that's my quick demonstration of the data dashboard that came out of this project. I'm going to stop sharing. And Ken, if you wouldn't mind bringing the presentation back up, please. Thank you.
You're just going to need to advance to the end. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So that was my quick overview of the urban street tree inventory project we did in the city of Dover. This final data dashboard can be found on the new Granite website, and it can be found in the Regional Planning Commission spoke that Sarah was sharing about as well. I will also mention that as part of this project, all of the GIS data used in this project either came directly from Granite or was created by us during the lifespan of this project. So I believe that is my overview of this inventory project, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. And if you think of any other questions about conducting a street tree inventory in your community or using ARC Online dashboards, my contact information is on the screen, and feel free to contact me anytime.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jackson. And that was some pretty impressive and looks like pretty easy to help, for everybody to get that going, and the benefits of it are pretty enormous. It's good to see. We do have one question here. Can you tell us how much it cost?
Yeah. So to create a data dashboard, all you need is an ARC Online account, an organizational ARC Online account. So I don't know how many cities and towns have those types of ARC Online accounts. I would say the majority of larger cities and towns probably do. At least half of the regional planning commissions have these accounts. So to create the dashboard, once owning that account is completely free. Exact costs that we pay yearly on that account, I'm not prepared to answer that question at the moment. But once you have an ARC Online account, these can be made for free.
Okay. And I don't know if you see that. He'd like to know how many hours of labor.
Yeah, the street tree inventory itself, I believe we were averaging about 4 trees an hour. To create the data dashboard, once all of the data was submitted, this took, I'd say, 8 to 10 hours to create. And then creating the survey form that was used on the Survey 123 app, that took about 4 hours to create.
Okay. Thank you for the questions. And once again, thank you to all three presenters. I think we can all take away from this just how far things have grown. Now we've seen at the state and at the regional level, and now down to the municipal level as well. There's a lot of new opportunities to learn more about your communities with the geographic data that's available now. All right, I've just posted on the chat one more time a link to the. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to take control back here so I can advance the screen. There we go. I've posted in the chat a link to the evaluation forms. We do appreciate any feedback that you can give us. And a reminder that the session slides and the recordings will be available beginning of next week on our website. So I think we will wind up the session for today a few minutes early. The next session after lunch will start at 12:45, and we'll look forward to seeing you then.